Let's do this. Okay. I'm a massive fan of giving you as much information in as short amount of time as possible. So I'm going to skip all sorts of introduction. Who am I? What do I have to do with the sexual energy? All that business. Look it up. You know, I'm quite vocal about it, and I will be vocal about it at some point. And I'm doing this quite in an intuitive fashion. You know, I don't have a schedule for this. I don't have any plans for what I'm going to say. No, that's not true. That's not true. What I mean by it is that this is going to be a live thing. And this is the first time that I go on camera when I'm not fully by myself. So it's different. I mean, that's why it's so personal, because there are parts of my being, parts of my consciousness, and I don't channel. I never channeled. You know, I don't do anything with angels and ascended masters and beings and all that. You know, none of those entities. But it's a version of me. It's a part of me, and versions of myself are with me and have always been with me. I had quite an open line of communication with them for such a long time now, but we've never really co-created anything together. So this is the first time when it's not just fully me being here as you see me. It's a little bit more than that. It's a different timeline. It's a different energy frequency. It's a different way of communicating. So we'll see what's going to come out. Okay, so first of all, you know, a couple hours ago, I was like, why does this matter? Why is it important? Why should we do anything about the sexual energy? Why do we even care? Why do I care? Why should I put energy into this? Is this something relevant? Is this something that's needed right now? And I really had to go silent, and I really had to look for the answer that, you know what I see on this planet is that we are at crossroads, and we have a couple of choices to make about how we want to live the rest of our existence here. And I have the honor and the pleasure to be involved with Keylontic science as of this year for the past couple months only. But I've had the intuitive knowledge of what Keylontic science is teaching. And it's been a strange and weird journey for myself to be on this planet. I have spent most of my time here in very painful, very uncomfortable, very physically uncomfortable situations. And somehow the sexual energy, and at some point I'm going to turn this into an orgasmic energy rather than a sexual energy, but we're going to get to that. So the sexual energy, the orgasmic energy, has been for me the touchstone that somehow has always brought me back to my body, to my sane mind, to be able to say that, you know what, I'm going to do one more day and I'm going to stay here and I'm not going to be taken down. I'm going to keep doing this, because otherwise what I've realized is that even though I was working in a audio-visual field, filmmaking, I never really noticed that my understanding and how I relate to the world is a kinesthetic understanding rather than a visual or an auditory experience. I do have audio cues quite often, and I do refer to them quite often. The voice is in my head. And strangely, my visual senses are the furthest from my direct cognition. The way I receive information is predominantly through my body, my sensations, through sound frequencies, vibrational frequencies. And when I look at the world, when I look at especially the media landscape or the entertainment landscape or the educational landscape, I don't see many kinesthetic examples of how to understand the world, or how to translate the world, or how to carry yourself in a world where we are very heavily bombarded with electromagnetic frequencies, with ultrasonic sound pulses, with all sorts of general pollution, with other people's energy field, because we're not taught how to carry our energies. And what does it have to do with the sexual energy? I'm not going to go into the science of it. I do subscribe to a scientific spiritual paradigm that explains a 15-dimensional anatomy, 15-dimensional human anatomy and galactic anatomy. And I very heavily, very geekily study morphogenetic field physics, which is a unified field physics. It explains a beautifully coherent system from a subatomic scale, from our biochemistry, our physiology, up to a galactic scale. And it's like a nesting doll system where every layer is capable of communicating with each other. And they have different frequency bands, different flavors of energy, different variations of energy. And at the same time, everything manifest is created from the one and the same energy. We are within the field of consciousness, in the dispersed field of consciousness. We are individuated, focused, concentrated beams of conscious energy. So we are experiencing ourselves within ourselves. And once you get to more complex states of consciousness, you get to experience yourself as a spherical being. And it's not like a bubble. It's not like you have an outer perimeter and you would have an internal void or this internal empty space. When you know yourself as a spherical consciousness, it's more like you're like a drop of water, that it has an internal substance. It has an internal mechanics. So yes, we are existing in 3 dimensions in the sense that we have height, depth, and width. And we have more layers of that, more complexity of that. And I don't like using terms like higher or lower frequency or self or anything like that. Complex. It's a measure of complexity, a level of complexity. And I'm just going to check up on things, how things are going. Okay. That spherical identity, that spherical consciousness, when we expand our sense of self from the individual, and you start noticing different frequencies rather than just what we are culturally limited to experience, because it is a systemic issue. It's not just a personal issue. That's why I realized that it does matter. That's why I realized that I'd rather speak up about these things than stay quiet. Because it's fine and dandy that I do it as a personal practice, but then I'm realizing that when I look around, I still see that so many issues, so many interpersonal issues, so many relationship issues can be solved by rebalancing creation currents, which are sexual currents. We'll get to that. So, when you know yourself as a spherical identity, you start understanding time, space in a slightly different fashion. That's why I'm saying that I have a kinesthetic understanding, that I have a very geometrical understanding of how the world works. For instance, I said this yesterday to someone, that it's like a slinky. that just imagine if a slinky would be turned on itself. So it's more like a donut. And you're on the inside of the slinky. So you're the one going around on the loops, on the inside of the loops. And whenever you change color, that's when you're traveling on the inside of the slinky, you're experiencing yourself as a linear journey, as a linear traveler. But if you start splicing that journey differently, or if you're looking at that journey from a different perspective, from a different angle, then you can say that you have a different time experience, or you experience yourself as, sorry, Facebook is having trouble with playing this video. Give me 2 seconds to sort this out. This is getting ridiculous. See, I know, technology, I know. And you know, I'm not even surprised. Like a couple months ago, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna give up trying. But then things changed. I became a lot more, how shall I put this? I wanted to say kinky. No, that is not kinky. Come on. I became a lot more, I poke a lot more rather than stay put in my corner. So if, you know, if the gods of internet are pushing back, then so shall we push. So it means that you're going to be watching this at a different time. How funny that we're talking about time. Okay, anywho. I might do this again then. I'm just like, I wanted to do a live version of this. Anywho. So if you are on the inside of the slinky, when you change color, you can think about it as that's the moment when you've changed a self, a version of yourself, when you've stepped up in frequency. And when that step up in frequency happens, when you physically change to a different range of color, vibration, frequency, then you physically get to experience yourself as a different version of you. And I might, you know, I don't want to keep blabbering on about it, but I might go into it as we go along, that I have 20 years muscle memory of depression, 25 years of anxiety, which means I got very, very educated in biochemistry, neurochemistry, especially your brain chemistry has really been fascinating for me, because I very frequently, I felt like I'm at the mercy of this body. I didn't know how to be good with my body. You know, I didn't know how to handle myself. I didn't know how to generate more serotonin in my system. I was physically, biochemically deprived of certain biochemical, certain electrical signals, connections that are vital for your health, for your well-being, for your innate sense of wanting to connect with other people. So I stayed for a very long time. I stayed completely by myself, and I had a long, long time to understand what's going on in my body, to actually listen to my body. And now I'm capable of telling the difference between states when I have certain brain chemicals or not, states when I am setting myself on a specific trajectory, going down a very successful day when my interactions are going to be mutual, or I know exactly when I'm setting myself up for failure, when I'm setting myself up for a fight, or, I started feeling into states how and when people are thinking about me, feeling about me, even when they are on the other side of the planet. So very different states of consciousness started to find me because of my relation to the sexual energy. Because now let's look at what the sexual energy is, or how I define the sexual energy, or what it is and what it isn't. The reason why I chose the term sexual transmutation is because if you Google the term, I believe the first use of it, I might be wrong about it, but I believe the first use of it was in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. And that book was written in 1936. That was the year that the Golden Gate Bridge was built. So since then, a couple of things have changed, and a couple of explanations and descriptions have changed and can be and should be updated. Just because our collective consciousness is changing, just because the way we look at ourselves or the resources that we have are such that we've never been this connected globally as human beings, even though it's through technology right now. We've never been this close to a spiritual life, just because our baseline survival needs are more met than ever before. We still have problems, obviously, but we are better off as society as a whole than ever before. Which means I started a relationship with the sexual energy very early on. So I have a slightly different understanding of it than most people. Up to the point when, in times when I really, really questioned what is the purpose of my being, and not in the sense that, what am I here to do? Couldn't give two shits about that. No, it was more coming from a sense that if I experience this much pain, if I experience this much physical struggle, if I'm physically this sensitive on a planet that is not very kind to sensitive people, electromagnetically, it's not like I run into a couple of dickheads. It's more a case of 90% of music on this planet genuinely translates as noise to my body, as anxiety, as distraction. And it's been one of those experiences that I still don't know how to put it. I still don't fully understand where this sensitivity is coming from. It's very new to me to have a scientific language for it, to understand that I'm not alone with this level of sensitivity, and to understand that it's just purely different from how other people understand and sense the world. I genuinely sense the world through feelings and sensations, which means when somebody feels something in the next room, even though we have walls, or when somebody feels something on the other side of the planet, even though we have miles and miles of distance between us, if we have made a connection before, if we have established a form of energetic harmony before, then I do pick up on their feelings. and I did not have the means to differentiate which feelings are mine and which feelings are others. Now, so how I understand the sexual energy is that through the times when I asked myself that why is anything? Why do I exist? Why is anything on this planet is the way it is? Because my experience was quite a painful experience. So those were the times when gradually my understanding of what sexuality is and what the sexual energy is, that understanding gradually gave me the original answer, or at least an answer that I do genuinely feel happy with. It gave me the answer why I came to this planet and why I have the experiences that I have. And my answer was that I have been interested in the sexual energy from such a young age because this was the closest that I could get to what source might feel, what creation might feel like. And my deepest, most fundamental questions, especially when I was questioning my own existence, were around deeply existential questions. What is the purpose of life, existence, anything? Why is anything here the way it is? And then when I started studying creation mechanics in the Keylontic sense, and when I started putting that scientific, linear, structural knowledge next to my slightly chaotic, very instinctive, very feminine, very experiential understanding of 20-something years of exploration. When I started putting the two together, that's when I realized that probably, as close as I can get with my understanding, probably anything and everything is because Source enjoys it. Because the creator of anything and everything manifest is actually having a sensual, experiential pleasure out of creation, the act of creation itself. When you start looking at creation mechanics, and we're only going to look at the scientific data at the end of February. When you look at creation mechanics, it is an expanding and contracting cycle, never-ending cycle of energy release and an energy backflow to Source. And there's a perpetual communication. There's a constant movement between the manifest world and Source creation point. And based on our original design, based on the mathematics, the physics, the mechanics that do enable this constant, perpetual back and forth, we should have, as human beings, we should have the ability to fully and eternally regenerate physical or non-physical matter base. Now that's when shit got real interesting. It's like, when I looked at, okay, what is sexual transmutation? Because I did a podcast on it, or a webinar on it ages ago, and it was a 2-hour webinar. And I looked at what's out there and what sexual transmutation is about. And most of the people are combining it with some form of celibacy, some form of restraining yourself from even masturbating, or restraining your semen retention, restraining yourself from ejaculation, which is still just male ejaculation. I'm like, what's up with the females in this whole paradigm just because a dude wrote that book? And I had a different experiential understanding of what the sexual energy is capable of. So the only reason why I'm using this phrase, sexual transmutation, is because I just want to be able to offer a different understanding of what this alchemical process of transmuting an energy, any kind of energy, what this process is capable of. So, imagine that this, purely theoretically, it's not like this is how the world works, or at least it should. It is still how it works. Imagine that this expanding and contracting dance, this cycle of energy thrust and energy drawback, is constantly capable of communicating with source creation point, which means that the original quantum source, the original energy, pure energy source, is involved in this orgasmic creation mechanics. Now, when we talked about from the galactic scale down to the biochemical scale, when you think about the creation of the cosmos, the creation of universes, the creation of planets, it's a little bit more elusive. When we talk about physical sex, or the orgasmic experience, or masturbation. If you've ever masturbated, you do have a sex life, even if you don't have a partner, even if right now you are not practicing sexuality, even if you think you might have a very weird sexual tendency. What I call sexual essence is completely independent from gender, sexual orientation, sexual identity, any kind of labeling, any kind of categories, any kind of descriptions. It's what I call sexual essence is this momentarily set snapshot of what creation currents, which creation currents you are running most predominantly through your bioenergetic field. We are electromagnetic creatures, and there are 3 different flavors of creation currents. One a more masculine, one a more feminine, and one a unified current. The more masculine current is a thrust energy, an electric energy, an outpicturing energy. The magnetic energy is a drawing in energy, almost like a vacuum-like energy. While the unified current is the quantum potential of having each polarity, both of the polarities, and none of the polarities at the same time. And that unified current, that quantum potential, is the closest to the nature of space-time, the nature of your identity, the nature of reality. And when I started understanding the sexual energy, when I started understanding creation from a sexual point of view, I realized that the same way as my body is generating sexual energy and communicates through the orgasmic energy, the exact same mechanism on a different level of complexity is what's happening on a galactic scale, on a planetary scale, on a societal scale. So once you understand one flavor of it, you start understanding creation mechanics. You start understanding the physics of manifestation, so that it's not just wishful thinking. It's an actual process, biochemical, biophysical process that your body is capable of. Because this matter form, how this is built, is not an ad hoc process. God is not a mysterious being. Humans are not void of God or creation, or how shall I even put it, spirituality. Humans are not void of spirit. Creation itself is not void of spirit. And creation is a very orgasmic and sexual experience. Sexuality is to me, the single most powerful creation process that we human beings are capable of. Now, I'm at this point, I'm interested in a slightly different level of creation. I realize that a lot of people are doing wonderful, amazing jobs around trauma healing, because it's much, much, much needed on this planet to clear our sexual karma, to clear our sexual shame, to clear body image issues that are not serving us, to clear certain energies that were very, very consciously put through our bodies as if it would be our own experience, as if those memories would be our own memories. Once the beings who understand multidimensional physics, it's actually not that difficult to very specifically target individuals or groups of consciousness with certain energy beams, with certain ultrasound frequencies, or outside of the visible light range, light quality frequencies that feel like they are your own. And I only realized that because of this weird understanding that I walk around like a sponge on this planet. And I felt so incredibly bad for most of my life that I just needed to figure a way out for myself that, what is this? What is life? This is bullshit. What is this? So that's where sexual energy, my relationship with the sexual energy really started to come into play and really started to help. Now, this was a long-winded intro. What I'm really interested in, personally, this is the personal part. What I'm really interested in is what this energy, I'm going to call it orgasmic energy rather than sexual energy. I'm going to get back to that, why there's a difference, or why I draw a difference between the two. So what I've come to understand through, I've put this body through an unusual amount of orgasmic experiences. And I don't say it, it's not something that I brag about. It's not something that I'm proud of. It's not that I'm not proud of it, but it's not something that, it's not a base for any argument. It's just my life. It's just my personal experience. And it is always going to be my opinion. So if anybody has a different experience, if anybody has a different understanding of the world, I do welcome those differences. I just realized that the more I speak up about these viewpoints or these angles that I've gathered, the more I'm realizing that, first of all, there is not a good outlet for this kind of relationship with the sexual energy, or with intimacy, or with the body. And I'm realizing that when we are coming together when beings who have similar interests or similar ways of understanding the planet or life, beings who have a kinesthetic understanding as well, beings who have unusually high sex drives, then those beings, when they come together, and not in an orgy way, we're going to talk about why orgies are a very bad idea. When those beings come together in thought, in emotions, then we can create, we can shift reality, because there is a very black and white, very A to B method for using channeling. Channeling is such a bastardized word, but moving energy in and around your body, in and around your energy field, because this body is not an isolated incident. You can communicate with the rest of the cosmos, and you can communicate. You are, in fact, in communication right now. You are in communication with the rest of this planet. We are just very carefully not taught about it, and we are ridiculously misinformed about this. But we're going to get to that later. Probably around January. So how I look at sexuality is that at this point, that's my get out of jail free card. That's my passport out of this frequency fence, out of this version of reality that we are dropped into. And I know that this message and my messages are not going to be speaking to anyone and everyone. And I also understand that the people who do find some similarities with these messages, and it's funny that it's not live. It's so fucking funny that I couldn't get it work live. I'm going to find a way how to. So when we come together live, when we do share this flavor of orgasmic energy, I mean, I've only been properly experimenting with this for the past couple of years. And I would love to, that's why it's a personal thing, because up until now, it has been a very personal process for me. And I've come to the point in my life, in my professional life, and everything, where I'm looking for the evidence. I'm looking for the scientific hardcore evidence of it. So I've had personal transformations where I started mixing and shifting timelines. I started communicating with different versions of myself that can be categorized as living in a future timeline, in a sense that they have a higher frequency accretion than what I'm living with currently. It's not that they are running around in shiny lycra. That's not the future. And the future is not technology. We're going to talk about technology at some point. So for me, what's most interesting at this point is how to use the sexual energy to change my physical matter density so that I would regain the original consciousness that I somehow, somewhere in a very fragmented memory, have the faint muscle memory of that existence, of that being. I keep saying that I do remember a place that I call home, where you remember the spherical identity. Just imagine that not just a couple of good friends, not just a planet, an entire galaxy is full of beings, full of species that do not have the internal inclination to hurt or harm. Now, that's a very alien feeling for us. But just imagine for a second that you would be able to feel the impact of your actions so directly, so boundlessly, so instantly, that it truly makes no sense to want to cause harm or to hurt something else, because you actually really feel that other being as if it is a part of you. In places like that, beings, when they want to contact each other, even though if they're not in a spherical identity, even if they have a body form, even if they have a shape, even if they are shaped like a tree or an animal or some part of nature, like a cloud or an element of nature, like water or fire, even if those beings are more consciousness collectives, such as a sun or such as an entire galaxy, those consciousness collectives, those energy forms, those identities, when they want to communicate with each other, when they want to touch each other, when they want to make love to each other, they sing. When you sing to another being, when you generate sound within your own field, and the other being can instantly sense within their own being the exact replica of your message, then it doesn't matter where you are in space-time. You just tune into the same frequency and you are having the same experience of being at one, coming together, unification. So by the end of February, we're going to get to sexy physics. I do think that creation mechanics, the physics of unified field, is an incredibly sexy mechanism, but it's just me. So that's that state that I call home, where beings are so incredibly free to experience each other, to connect with each other, to communicate with each other, to be intimate with each other. Because there's no danger in fully opening up and giving yourself. And I'm not saying that that's what we should do on this planet, because this planet is not built that way. It is not safe here to do that. That's why I'm saying that in places like that, in places that I call home, there is such a sense of peace, safety, harmony, that when I looked around and felt around on this planet and listened around on this planet, I realized that there is truly no place like home. And I felt ridiculously stuck here. And I felt like I have to figure out a way to get back home. So if this flavor of exploration speaks to you, then that's what's waiting for you. That's the next step of your evolution. Trust that if something in this message personally speaks to you, it's because you've brought yourself to this point in your personal evolution and you're ready for the next step. Because I'm ready for the next step. And it's going to be amazing. At some point, I'm not sure how, I'm going to take this offline and start doing very small, very intimate, in-person practices with proper bioregenesis, DNA level, timeline shifts, embodying different versions of yourself and properly creating, properly manifesting different time-space realities. But I do understand that we got to get there first. We have to build a frequency bridge first, because I experience it in my own body that it is damaged. We are not capable of cellular communication. We are not even aware of if something aches, pains, which frequencies should I direct to heal a wound, to ease a pain. I don't know how to communicate with my cells. I don't know how to communicate with my elementals, with my atoms, to be able to say that, would you like to experience a different reality right now? And then we would be able to get to that physical state, that frequency change together. That's what sexual transmutation for me is about. Not Tantra, not the lack of masturbation, not semen retention, cellular regeneration, and full free will, eternal life creation. Now, I get it that it's far from where we are right now. I'm fully aware of that. I'm not delusional about it, but I'm aiming fucking high. I think that's why I'm fortunate enough, and in a way I've been always very protected around sexuality somehow, that if you look at the sexual culture, if you look at the sexual landscape, I spent 10 years in filmmaking, advertising, storytelling. So I'm painfully aware. And I'm very interested in the psychology of storytelling, the psychology of manipulation, the psychology of propaganda, mind control. And I did my own fair share of research and studying. And what's going on this planet is such a carefully orchestrated, large-scale organization that, because we were born into this system without an open memory line, without an open access to our own memory bank, to our own incarnational memory, or to our own multidimensional or interdimensional self, we're pretty much left in the dark. We did not come here with a map. We have no clue what we're doing. And we're pretty much like a 5,000 pieces puzzle just being dropped on the floor. And the box is thrown away. And someone just goes, you know what? You figure it out, honey. And we're putting the pieces together and be like, this is pretty. This kind of fits. And the more you're doing it, the more you're like, oh, I think I'm getting a picture-ish thing here, but I don't know where it fits. And if we're lucky enough, we get some portion of the picture by the end of the 80, 90 years that we spend on this planet, and then we can start the whole thing again. Beautiful. Now that wasn't enough for me. That wasn't a good enough explanation of what I'm doing here and why I'm here and what's this whole thing is about, what's this whole life thing is about or is supposed to be about. And I just didn't understand how my personal experience or my skill sets fit into this planet. You know, I was in an industry film where I've always wanted to be. And when I was there, when I was part of creating stories and creating scenarios and creating films and adverts that were geared towards an agenda, when I started seeing what that agenda is, when I started feeling how those stories are created, how the people who are creating those stories, how their energies are, what are the energies that we are engaging with, what are the energies that we are ingesting, what are the energies that we're being fed. I felt incredibly disheartened about why would I want to communicate through a language that I so disagree with. I've found very dark energies at the core of the entertainment industry, the music industry, the film industry. And even though the tools are attracting talent, natural creativity, and incredible people, the entire structure is energetically built from and based around very, very inhumane practices. And there's all sorts of sexual magic going on in the background because beings who are aware of how to, not just what to, not just the phenomena that this exists that you can create through the sexual energy, but the beings who are very aware of how to create with the sexual energy. They are using certain rituals and initiation practices where entire companies, entire industries, the porn industry, and the film industry, and the music industry, entire fields of consciousness are founded upon the premise of energy siphoning. Because once you disconnect yourself, once you disconnect your consciousness, your perception from eternal life creation and the fear of death, the fear of finite life enters your consciousness, then you're eradicating your ability to even want to feel at one, even want to go back home, even want to be at one with everything. And the less you want to be at one, the more you're inclined to self-sustain and survive. And in a system where you don't have an open line of communication with eternal energy source, eternal quantum, you have to feed on other beings to be able to sustain the lifespan that you've created for yourself. And the sexual energy is being used as food source for beings, for collective, for consciousness collectives who are well versed in multidimensional physics. And we were born with our limited understanding of self and life and history. We were born into a sexual landscape where we are inevitably a product of a fantasy system of what sexuality is, or what the body is, or what intimacy is. It's a fabrication. It's a fictional story that we are being told and we are being fed. It used to be a religious story. Nowadays, it's a more scientific story, or a more secular story, or a more entertainment-based story. But we are still being told who we are and who we should be. Sometimes directly. Sometimes we just see models that look nothing like normal, average human beings. Not just because they are photoshopped. If you look at the life of a certain level of filmmaking talent, or a certain level of beings who use their bodies, models, actors, singers, performers, who use their bodies as their vehicle. After a certain level of fame, a certain level of success, a certain level of money, those entities, those beings are not fully individuals. They are assets. And the stories that we're getting about ourselves are coming through people who do not live lives in a sustainable way, in a healthy or wholesome way. The amount of body image issues that those beings have, the amount of drug use, alcohol problems, horrible marital problems, horrible relationships that those beings themselves have in their personal lives is not allowed to be filtered to the public image that you are being shown. And we are living at an age where we are more public about our personal lives than ever. So that air of mystery is somehow melting away, but there is still a sense of wanting to be someone that you've seen. And the underlying feeling is that because you are not enough. And that message is so seamless, so universal on this planet, so well crafted, so well orchestrated, that even when you're getting messages of emancipation and movements that were designed to liberate you from the previous shackles of old-time thinking, some of those models are still selling you the exact same fears, the exact same intimacy issues, the exact same body image issues, the exact same unhealthy behaviors, just packaged as the other side of the argument. But you are still in a fight with yourself You're still in a fight with your body. You're still in a fight with your emotions. You're still in contradiction with other beings, other groups, other religions, other skin colors. Still, the message, the first rule of storytelling, script writing, is conflict. If you have a conflict in each and every scene of your script, it is deemed to be an even better script for it. Which means technically, we've never seen a love story without conflict. We've never seen a relationship without conflict. And I'm not such a film buff. If you do have a film that is showing us a good example of maneuvering around conflict without having to go through it, please do let me know. I have not seen a good example of it, or a healthy example of it, or enough example of it. And just as sponges, we soak up those messages so readily, so instantly, that if you revisit certain films, books, music, holy shit, start listening to the music that you've listened to when you were in your teenager years, when you were in your sexually formative years. Start actually listening to the lyrics of the songs that you kept listening to over and over again. Shit you not. You will be able to draw parallels, and you would be able to see how you are playing out in your relationships those messages, those lyrics. And it's been very carefully crafted. It's been very, very conscious. And, once you start looking at that crumbling reality, and once you start understanding your place, and in the beginning, it's a very disorientating feeling. It's like, okay, it's a systemic issue. We are still being not just mentally bombarded with messages of not being good enough, not just emotionally being bombarded with chemicals of addiction and such dopamine highs that your body cannot keep up, but we're also being physically, very, very physically, in a resonance way, in a sonic audio way. We are being bombarded with frequencies, physical, tangible frequencies, even if you cannot hear them or can't see them, they are frequencies. We are being bombarded with energies that were designed to keep us enclosed, smaller, lesser, dumber than what we are and what we're capable of. Now, my relationship with the sexual energy has been it has been, it had its ups and downs in terms of it was a slightly different experience in my relationships, in my physical relationships with other people. It was a slightly different experience than with my relationship with source, with creation itself, with other parts of my beings, other versions of my beings. So my connection to the sexual energy itself has been a bit more cerebral than most people's understanding, even though I have put this body through, okay, so I'm not saying this to intimidate anybody. It's just a fact at this point. And I'm coming from a very different background than most people who go into the sexuality industry, or, when I was like, do I belong here? I don't really feel like, I don't do tantra. I don't do any of those things. Like, why am I supposed to be saying anything about this? And then I realized that because I'm coming from a very different experience, I don't have in this lifetime, I don't have any muscle memory of sexual abuse or physical abuse, which means that my relationship with the sexual energy is the only area of my life that has not experienced some form of tragedy, suffering, abuse, immense pain. I don't even have period pain. I don't, this area, this whole section of my life, this entire region of energetic center has been so guarded and so protected by some beautiful form of consciousness that I felt like I have to do something with this. So, so at this point, at this point with my average, I mean, it's a very humble average. But, if you do count, I mean, I wasn't counting, I'm not a sociopath. But if I were to average at this point, this body had over 10,000 orgasmic experiences. And it doesn't mean I masturbate a lot. It means it's a different part of my meditational practice. And it also means that I have orgasmic experiences with beings that I don't necessarily have a sexual connection with. That's where I differentiate between sexual and orgasmic energy. To me, sexuality is, by the way, like clothes just fall off me. If I could, I would be without clothes at all times. Just, I appreciate fabric. I appreciate style. I appreciate colors, fashion, but my body feels like I cannot breathe when I have clothes on. I mean, I'm wearing the baggiest clothes and they just naturally fall off my body. If I could, I would be walking around naked at all times. But obviously not on this planet. I don't want the unwanted sexual attention. I don't want to send a wrong vibe about it. I really have to be very specific with my energies because this body is so sensitized at this point that I can genuinely have an orgasmic experience right here, right now, at will, if I wanted to. But it's not a circus trick. I'm not a fucking monkey. I don't just go around and have sex with everything that moves. So I have had a very different sexual experience and orgasmic experience. I've learned to sensitize this body to the point when I have absolutely transcendental, otherworldly experiences, sober experiences, when I can feel that my biochemistry is doing things that it wouldn't be doing in a genuinely just elevated state of joy or happiness. It's more than that. Something actually physically, chemically is changing in my biology during those orgasmic experiences. And it is a very physical orgasmic experience. I can have versions of consciousness when I'm in a male body and in a female body at the same time having an orgasmic experience with each other. I don't know how to put this into words because that sort of connection, that sort of understanding, the emotional understanding within that being is something that I can call it woo-woo. I can call it bullshit. Or I can realize that maybe, just maybe, that's who we actually are. That's what we're actually capable of. Those are the non-physical senses, the supernatural abilities that are actually natural and should be actually natural to this human body, to this physical experience. And for some institutional reasons, they are kept from us. So as much as any kind of emotional work, shadow work, sexual work is a very good way of having a better sex life, having more intimacy, having a better connection, a better relationship, better life, better quality of life. I'm at a stage of my life when I'm interested in more. Okay, I can talk up a storm. All right, so what's going to happen in January and February is that I'm going to be sharing a step-by-step recollection of my experiences. Even this talk is not as sexual as I genuinely am. You know, I don't really show that side of me to people because I did not want them to equate to what's out there about sexuality. I have a very different sex life from the mainstream understanding of what sex is or sexuality is. And the more I speak up about it, the more I realize that I'm not alone with this. We just do not allow enough conversations to feel like we're not alone with it and to find people who are interested in the same topics, interested in the same ways, the same methods. There's tremendous power in people coming together. There's physically, there's mathematically, there's exponential growth in people putting together their energies, their energy fields. Exponential growth means that one person's concentration, focus, energy input compared to 10 people's simultaneous focus on the same thing at the same time with an elevated emotional investment. One person's energy compared to 10 people's energy is 1 to a billion. That's what exponential growth is. Put 10 people in a room, get them resonating on the same wavelength, get them singing the same tone, get them feeling the same emotions, get them experiencing each other with the full safety of opening your energy field up and allowing someone's energy to enter you, and create a safe space where it's actually safe for us to exchange energies to that depth, to that level. Get 10 of those people in the room and you get a billion more times potent, creative, powerful, strong energy, manifestation energy than you would have sitting by yourself in a room or on top of a mountain, wherever you wish to do your thing. So those are the things that I'm interested in at this point. Let's see what we're going to do in January and February. I'm looking at the topics that we're going to run through just to give you a quick outline. So what I'm interested in, first of all, I feel very weird. Like I'm not good at promotion or advertising or anything like that. I genuinely feel like I should not be charging for any of this. The only reason why I'm doing it is because, first of all, it's an investment from you as well. So it's a commitment. It means that you're actually going to show up. It's not just something that you signed up for and never going to look at. Second, I wouldn't be able to dedicate this much time, energy, investment to doing the work and going into those emotional states, going into those physical states. I've spent, I don't talk about these things, but I've spent more time off planet in this lifetime than I've spent on planet. So it's a very strange experience for me to be here. It's like I'm not fully, that's why I like connecting to my body through dancing and singing and sex and everything that's orgasmic for me, because it makes me feel like I actually live on this planet. Because otherwise I would be able to have these, it's not fully by location because I'm not capable of taking my body to a different state yet. But it's a full-on experience from a very young age that I have almost like I'm existing at two different worlds at the same time. There is another world with me right in front of me, so clear that I, especially as a child, sometimes I had very different experiences. You know, I had a very interesting time assimilating to other kids, or you know, when people did not share this type of experience, then I didn't, as a child, I did not know how to communicate this. And now that I'm finding it, now that I'm realizing that they are not uncommon and they are not something that you should be locked up for. They are not mental health issues. They are natural states of what human beings are capable of. Now that I'm realizing this, now I understand that the journeys that I've been doing, the emotional work that I've been doing, the physical work that I've been doing might not be something that has a job title on this planet at the moment, but it doesn't mean that it's not worthy. So the other reason why I'm asking for some absolutely token amount of money, just to be able to set myself free from a 9-to-5 and dedicate time, energy, effort, investment into exploring states of consciousness, exploring body consciousness, exploring worlds, and doing hundreds of hours of very hardcore studies so that I'm able to bridge a frequency gap for other people, so that you don't have to do the work, so that you don't have to read those books, and you don't have to look at those hundreds of hours of videos, and you don't have to go through all those 25 years of experiences. So that's the little form of energy exchange. But I do feel like that this knowledge, the knowledge itself, should be absolutely free, because it's everyone's birthright to know and understand and remember who you are. So what we are going to do through January and February, just let's have a look at what I've crafted for 12 segments, 12 steps, because creation, eternal life, perpetual movement creation is a base 12 system instead of a base 10 system. Completely different topic, completely different videos. I'm going to keep it just to the sexual bits, and I'm only going to talk about the science at the very end of it in February. But there is a reason behind anything and everything that I do here. So now I do understand that it's a process to get ourselves to states where our identity has a clear integrity, where you don't carry shame in your body, you don't carry anger in your body, you don't carry a constant low-level anxiety in your body that just feels so normal that we believe that that's the only way to live. This roller coaster of coffee, exhaustion, physical, emotional abuse, completely overworked, numbed, out of it, high out of, drunk out of my fucking mind, states of overexciting and then completely neglecting the body it became such a norm on this planet that we've disconnected ourselves from the ability to instantly heal the body, to instantly communicate with the body. And that's just on a physical level. On an emotional level, on a mental level, we are gradually disconnecting, but we are already disconnected. You know, we're not capable of reading each other. We're not capable of mind reading, of knowing each other's energy. Those are not woo-woo things to do at all. They are just clear communication channels, not jammed. That's all you need. Just don't poop into my soup, you know, just don't be a little about it. Can we just talk? Can we just understand each other? On this planet, even when we're speaking the same language, understanding is not such a straightforward issue. You know, we are further down the line than what could be solved with just a good conversation. But it's still worth having those conversations. So my point is that if you are in any shape or form at a point of your life where you're interested in what's beyond, and how can you have good relationships? How can you have intimate relationships? I never got into that point. How can you have a different fulfillment and deeper satisfaction in your life? Not just in a sense of how can you have orgasms, or how can you have better orgasms, or how can you have more orgasms, or how can you have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a wife, a husband? How can you have, you know, there are those questions that are integral part of sexuality and intimacy. But if you also have the interest in how to start communicating with your body to the extent that all your communication channels are clear, healthy, strong, on a cellular level, on a physical level, emotional level, mental level, then you will start to experience that each and every one of your relationships is taking a qualitative change. I'm literally not the same person that I was a few years ago, a few months ago, yesterday. And yes, in a sense, all of us physically, biochemically, we are changing. We're different beings every single second. No 2 seconds are the same. But compared to the first 23, 4 years of my life versus the last 7, 6, 5-ish years of my life, ever since I started using the sexual energy in a more precise, more scientific, more conscious way, I have experienced personal shifts and objective shifts in my environment, in my relationships that did not exist before. And they were not part of my reality, my field of reality. You know, there were connections in my life that completely came out of left field. Just when I became a new person, an entire new set of people started appearing around me. And those new connections open up exponential new connections, which means within a few months, I'm physically surrounded by a different reality. So if you feel stuck, and I'm quite familiar with the feeling of being stuck. You know, we share different experiences, but the emotional experience might be very similar. If you feel stuck, if you feel like you're self-sabotaging, if you feel like that you know better, you just don't do better for some reason, if you find yourself in addictive loops, if you find yourself in struggle, in suffering, in states of just such wicked mental health, where it really is an issue for you it's really work. It really takes an effort for you to come to zero from minus. If you're living in those states, if you don't know how to bridge that gap, if you want to do better, you just don't know how to. I'm not saying that this is the be all end all. I'm only sharing that this has worked for me. Working with the sexual energy, working with my body, working in such fashion with the orgasmic energy, learning how to sensitize my body, learning how to have a good, healthy relationship with the orgasmic energy. It was my way of healing myself from anything and everything that I wanted to. From, it was absolutely my way of reminding myself who I actually am, and being able to disconnect from the sexual landscape without shame or inferiority complex, or being able to disconnect from the dating game, being able to disconnect from the feeling of loneliness, from the feeling of fear, of wanting to find the right one and not finding the right one, and then just not having fulfilling relationships, not having an orgasm. You're talking to the lady who's been having orgasms since I was 5, and I could not have an orgasm with a partner in my relationships. Now I understand why. And at some point, I think around the porn episode, I'm going to open up about the dark side of sexual energy and what an orgasm does energetically in your field, and how it connects you to other people, and what does the porn industry do to all of us. It is going to go into the porn section. So it doesn't mean that just because I had this relationship, or just because I had this connection, that all of my life were rosy and hippy chippy. It just means that now, looking back, holy fuck, I actually have a method that works. I actually have a way of healing myself, helping myself, building healthy connections with myself, with other versions of myself, with other timelines of myself, as well as other people. I live a life where I feel fully free, ridiculously happy, very, very well connected. The beings around me, the beautiful, beautiful people around me are giving me so much love, so much genuine kindness, so much beauty. And this was not my experience for the first decades of my life. So I was not predestined to this kind of life. It's something I've made and I've built when I started using this orgasmic energy in a conscious way. When I started using the emotional depth that this energy has opened me up to. So let's see what we are going to talk about. So the way that this whole thing is structured is, I'm like, let's have 12 segments. This is my 12-step process. Last year, that was a big thing. The only reason why I'm talking is because the page is still loading. Last year, it was a massive experience for me. Russell Brand's book, Recovery. It was, I was 20-something, 27-ish, 8, I don't know, whatever I was last year. When I realized that, fuck, I am an addict. There is a psychology to being an addict. There are specific imbalances and tendencies, biochemical, biophysical tendencies that your body is going through as an addict. And there's a massive psychological need to hide it from yourself that you are an addict, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to keep up with your addiction. And once you define yourself as this is part of who you are, this is your identity, then you would use all the cognitive dissonance on the planet that you can gather just to save your identity, just to guard who you are. So I was very reluctant to admit that I need help. I really do need help. I was doing things to my body that I knew that were just not sustainable. It's just not. If I would enjoy some more hardcore drugs, and thank fuck I don't, but if I would, then I would be dead by now. Because the way my understanding is shaped is I emphasize slightly off-planet things compared to the planetary things. So my life, my being, my existence, my possessions, my anything did not mean as much to me so that I would be staying for any of it. So I really have to, I still have to, but I had to look for the experience, the experiential journey, the inner journey that would keep me here. Because none of the external circumstances were enough to actually make me feel like that I want to keep doing this, that I want to live, that I want to stay here. I really had to look for the motivation to keep doing life.